Thank you guys for coming back and checking out the latest episode of Conference Chatter TV, where we pick every game in the Big 12 this college football season. My name's Eric Sorrentino. I'm the KSports.com Big 12 blogger, and I'm here to make some picks in Week 4 in the Big 12. So let's get right to them here with what I think is the game of the week in the Big 12. It's going to be number 8 Oklahoma traveling to Cincinnati at 5 p.m. on Saturday. This is actually the second game in a home-and-home series. Oklahoma won the last one 52-26, pretty big, in 2008. That one was in Norman. This one's going to be at Cincinnati. And I expect the Sooners to win this game. I'm going to go ahead and take Oklahoma. This is going to be the first time the Sooners are playing away from Norman this season, but I think the Sooners are the more talented team. And when you take a look at Cincinnati, one flaw really comes up when I was taking a look at that team, and that's that they've given up 15 sacks this season, by far the most in the country. That's 5 sacks per game. So I'm going to be looking for the Oklahoma defensive line to have a huge game. Jeremy Beal's got to be licking his chops at the opportunity to get to the quarterback for Cincinnati. And again, 15 sacks, that's a ton. That's most in the country. So I'm looking for Oklahoma in the trenches defensively to really dominate this game and take advantage. Oklahoma, they've played at home and they've shown mixed results. They looked mediocre in their opener against Utah State, then they looked dominant against Florida State, a ranked opponent, and then they looked mediocre again last week and just barely holding off Air Force. So which team will show up? I think it'll kind of be in the middle of maybe the second and third week. Maybe not quite as dominant as week 2, but I'm going to look for Oklahoma to win this game. Cincinnati, they've played 2 tough games on the road. They're 1-2 coming into this game, but they've had to travel to Fresno State and to North Carolina State. They dropped both those games, but they haven't lost at home. They've only played 1, but they beat Indiana State at home pretty convincingly. So this should be a pretty interesting game. I'm going to look for Bob Stoops and Oklahoma to prevail. Another one in the Big 12 South that's pretty interesting, UCLA at number 7 Texas at 2:30 p.m. in Austin. This is another home-and-home game. Speaking of those, this one's going to be in Austin, and they'll return to UCLA next year. The last time these two teams met was a while ago. It was 97 and 1998, and UCLA won both of those times, including a ridiculous 66-3 pounding in Austin in 1997. If you guys remember that, that was crazy. That was Texas's worst loss since 1904. But the news flash for today is that these are nowhere close to those Longhorns. If UCLA is looking for any kind of repeat, you can forget about it. I'm going with Texas in this game, and I think they're going to win pretty big. I think this is just a great matchup for UT. You take a look at UCLA and what it does well on offense. They run the ball pretty well, nearly 200 yards per game on the ground, but UT defends the run better than anyone in the country. They're number 1 in stopping the run, giving up a paltry 44 yards per game. They're great against this. This is a great matchup for UT. I think they'll, I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 touchdowns, maybe 3 touchdowns. I think UT is really going to look good in this game. It's a great matchup for them. And UCLA simply cannot pass. I mean, they only, I think it was at their 3rd worst in the country in passing offense, just 100 yards per game in the air. This is a great matchup for Texas, and at home in Austin, I'm going to look for UT to win this game pretty big. Next, we have Central Florida at K-State at 11:30 a.m. This one could get a little interesting. UCF, they're a Florida team. They have some athletes over there. Florida better than anybody in the country when it comes to recruiting speed in that state. It doesn't get much better than Florida, so they have some athletes down there. UCF pretty decent against the run, 45th in the country, and that's going to be huge for this game, clearly, because K-State rather one-dimensional on offense, but that one dimension is rather incredible. Daniel Thomas, this guy, I don't know. I have a little bit of concern about Thomas maybe being overworked here in the early goings. I hope for K-State's sake that he can be full strength and full speed once the Big 12 schedule comes out. But you take a look at it, and this is just a non-conference, and he's already at 27.7 carries a game. Granted, he's at 184 yards per game as well and 2 touchdowns per game. And, the guy's been ridiculous, but I hope that, for the Wildcats' sake, that they're at full strength for the full season, because this guy is unbelievable. He's one of the most explosive players in the country, and that's why I'm taking K-State in this game. I think at home, I think this game will be really close. I think UCF, they'll stick with K-State, but UCF does start a freshman quarterback on the road. I think that might get to him a little bit. So I'm going to look for K-State to rely on Thomas again and win that game. Next, we have Miami of Ohio at Missouri, 1 p.m. Missouri, very close call last week, barely edging San Diego State at home. And the Tigers are going to have to replace Aldon Smith for 2 weeks. That's a big loss. Their sophomore defensive end with a fractured fibula. He's going to be out 2 weeks. This works out okay for Missouri because they have a bye week next week and then open Big 12 play at home against Colorado, and Aldon Smith should be back for that contest. But this is a big loss for Mizzou. You're talking about a guy with 11.5 sacks last year. As a freshman, that was the Missouri single-season record, and he already has 3 this year as a sophomore. So, who's going to step up and fill that role? From the looks of it, it's going to be Brad Madison, a sophomore. I'm not familiar with him. I haven't seen him play. But I've been reading up on Missouri, and they're apparently very deep at defensive ends. So keep an eye on Madison and see if he can do a good job for replacing Smith, because I've seen Smith play. The guy's unbelievable. He's going to be an NFL pick, probably first rounder. And, should be interesting to see how Missouri gets to the quarterback without Smith. I'm going to take Missouri at home, certainly. But keep an eye on the defensive end and see if Missouri can get to the quarterback as well as they can with Smith. The other couple games I'll go through pretty quick here, kind of a lightning round-ish kind of thing here. New Mexico State at Kansas. The Jayhawks should certainly prevail at home against a winless New Mexico State squad. South Dakota State at Nebraska. Nebraska without a question. I think that's going to be the biggest margin of victory of any Big 12 team this week. Nebraska should win by, I don't even know, a lot, 40 maybe. Baylor at Rice. I'm going to go with Baylor in this. Rice, if you recall, they opened the season against Texas and played them pretty well, but they're 1-2 this season. They've been struggling a little bit, so I do like Baylor to hold them off. Baylor was embarrassed last week by TCU, and I think that they'll look for a little retribution here, so I'm going to go with the Bears. And the last one of the week, Northern Iowa at Iowa State. Another one that could be closer than some people might think, Northern Iowa, a lower-level FCS opponent, but the last time these two teams met, Northern Iowa actually won 24-13 in 2007 in Ames. And I was just looking at this with Jesse Newell upstairs from KUSports.com, and he was saying that Northern Iowa, I think, is 10 in the country in the lower-level FCS. Not bad, I'm going to go with Iowa State just because they're at home. I think that if this is at Northern Iowa, that might be different, might be thinking upset special, but I'm going to go Iowa State at home. I'm really going to keep an eye on the quarterback situation. Austin Arnaud injured his shoulder last week at K-State. It was his non-throwing shoulder, granted, but, if he's not 100%, this might have the makings of an upset, but Iowa State in Ames, I think they have to win some games this season because they have such a rigorous schedule once Big 12 play starts, and they should win this game. So I'm going to go with Iowa State there for the last one. So I'm picking every Big 12 team here, looking for an 8-0 showing from the conference in Week 4. So we'll see how that turns out. I'll be here this weekend, as always, to reflect on the games and tell you what I think. See if we can improve this year on a 31-3 showing and picking Big 12 games. Not off to a bad start, so we'll see how it turns out. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'll talk to you again this weekend. Take care.